John Bolton is former Trump's national security advisor. Welcome to our program, Ambassador Bolton.
Glad to be with you. Thanks for having me.
US President Donald Trump will meet Russian dictator Vladimir Putin in the upcoming days. According to BBC, also Russian dictator Putin is open to idea of a ceasefire in the air, according to Bloomberg's sources. Do you expect Vladimir Putin to make such a concession to agree with at least partial ceasefire in the air to avoid US sanctions?
Well, I think the meeting itself is a big victory for Putin. He has been a rogue actor since the invasion of Ukraine in 2022 and has not met with a U.S. president since he met with Joe Biden in Geneva in the summer of 2021, which many people think was related to the subsequent invasion in February of the next year. So this is a coming out party for Putin. He's going to be on a level with the president of the United States. There will be no Europeans or anybody else there, just the two of them. We don't know where this will be held. But I expect that Putin believes that this is his chance to get back on Trump's good side, to try and manipulate him like the trained KGB agent he is. And I think he will come with some kind of plan. He may already have given it to Steve Witkoff, Trump's personal friend, another New York real estate dealer, at their meeting at the Kremlin. It could be this ceasefire in the air, which I think could be very damaging to Ukraine if it also involves keeping down all the drone forces as well as airstrikes of the kind Russia has used. So it could be broader than that. It could be saying, look, we want to achieve a peaceful resolution to the whole conflict, and picking up some of the ideas that Vice President J.D. Vance has suggested earlier, which I think are potentially very detrimental to Ukraine. So it's a dangerous time. Putin has the public relations offensive, and I think he will try and use it.
Do you see this, for example, partial ceasefire in the air as a first step to achieving a full ceasefire in the nearest future? Do you expect Vladimir Putin to make such concession, to agree with a ceasefire deal, or at least try to achieve a long-term settlement?
Well, he's got a range of options. Frankly, I thought it was in Russia's interest to ask for a ceasefire about a year ago, given the enormous casualties they're suffering, notwithstanding they're making small advances on the ground. I don't know if Putin's thinking has changed, if he now believes that the predictions of Russian success in the summer offensive and related operations having not proven out, maybe he's more cautious. But I think his main thrust here will be to get Trump back on his side and to put Zelenskyy and Ukraine in a very difficult position of looking like they're the ones, in Trump's mind, who are obstructing Trump's effort to make peace and get the Nobel Peace Prize. And that's really what this is about. Trump hasn't switched his views to become pro-Ukraine. This is about Donald Trump's long-known desire to get a Nobel Peace Prize.
And from your perspective, could this meeting between US President Trump and Russian dictator Vladimir Putin, could this meeting be not the final one, but the first one as a part of a wider negotiations between US and Russia?
Yeah, I think it would be hopelessly naive to think that this is going to be resolved in one meeting between the two of them, or even one meeting between the three, Zelenskyy, Putin, and Trump, which Trump is predicting. Of course, he said a long time ago he would just get the two leaders in a room and resolve the whole thing in 24 hours. That isn't going to happen either. And remember, in Trump's first term, he met with North Korean dictator Kim Jong-un 3 times on the North Korean nuclear weapons program, and nothing was accomplished in any of those 3 meetings. So meetings produce a lot of press attention. We don't know yet where it will be held. That in and of itself will be a big story. I heard a rumor today that it might even be in the White House, which would be a huge mistake on our part if we did that. But I think Trump and Putin both don't see this meeting as really leading to a resolution. I think from Putin's point of view, as I've said, more repairing his relationship with Trump and putting the absent Zelenskyy on the defensive.
From your perspective, what are the main reasons behind Trump's willingness to meet with Putin next week? Did Putin promise something to Mr. Witkoff during the recent negotiations? Did he show his intention to reach the ceasefire in the air, as it was reported by Bloomberg, or it was just only willingness of Trump to do so after so-called successful negotiations in Moscow?
I think Putin has given Witkoff something to bring back with him. If they had more to talk about, Witkoff would have stayed in Moscow. But he had a 3-hour meeting, which really, considering translation, is an hour-and-a-half meeting. That's not a long time as these things go. So I think he is carrying a message to deliver to Trump, and we'll find out in due course what it is. It's said that actually Putin requested the meeting. I think that makes sense, although he knew Trump really would be open to it, and it suggests that Putin has been thinking about how to deal with the problem he's created with Trump by pushing too far, by presuming too much, and so I'm very worried that the Russians hope to grab the advantage of taking control of the narrative at this meeting, at least going forward in the near term.
Do you feel that Vladimir Putin has understood that he has overplayed his hand several weeks ago during this long phone calls between Trump and Putin, and his actions lead to Trump's frustration?
Yes, I think he does at this point. It's not clear to me whether Putin made this mistake unintentionally, whether he did it, he pushed the envelope as far as he could to see how much he could get away with, or he just did it intentionally because he didn't care. I think we can conclude now that he does want to repair things between him and Trump if he can. So I'm sure he's given a lot of attention to how to do that. You know, he was never going to say to Trump, I plan to fight this war until Ukraine is once again part of the Russian Empire. He's going to say he wants peace. And that's why I think presenting either a full-fledged peace plan or at least some kind of interim agreement proposal that would mitigate some of the ongoing hostilities would put him in a good light with Trump. I don't think that means Putin is back down on his ultimate objectives at all. I think this is part of a charm offensive with an audience of one, and that's Donald Trump.
And could these negotiations lead to a full ceasefire until the end of this year, from your perspective?
Well, I would be doubtful of that. I think there are too many complexities here. When people first heard the phrase ceasefire in the air in the United States, they thought, well, that would protect Ukraine from attacks on civilian infrastructure and civilian populations that Russia has been waging. But it would necessarily also preclude long-range strikes inside Russia of the kind Ukraine has perfected. And to me, maybe even more concerning is if the drone operations of both sides had to cease, I think that would disadvantage Ukraine potentially the worst. So I'm worried about it. I'm worried about a ceasefire that freezes the front lines in place, because I'm afraid that's the next step to de facto partition along those front lines. So a ceasefire, as attractive as it sounds, has a lot of potential downsides for Ukraine. And there are plenty of precedents where the sides in a conflict have negotiated while simultaneously fighting. That's nothing to reject out of hand.
US President Trump has been threatening to impose sanctions and tariffs on those countries which are buying Russia's oil. He has already imposed additional 25% tariff on Indian goods from India. Do you see this development as another reason why Vladimir Putin is trying to pretend to be more willing to reach a deal?
Well, I think he's hoping to use the imposition of the secondary tariffs on India to Russia's advantage. And I think he would try and do it in this way. The Indians have already said publicly they're going to continue their purchases of Russian oil and gas. So if that holds, then Russia will suffer no pain. It will be India that suffers the pain. So I could see Putin asking Trump to eliminate that secondary tariff against India, to say, look, they're not part of this. They shouldn't be disadvantaged. And if Trump says no, then the Indians are going to be even more outraged than they are now and grow closer to the Russians. It's also the case that the Chinese, who buy significantly greater oil and gas amounts from Russia than India, have not yet been hit with secondary tariffs, which outrages the Indians even more. So this is a case where competing strategic objectives may be at odds with one another, and Trump has put himself in this situation without thinking about it. But I would worry that Putin could outmaneuver Trump and actually work this to his advantage.
From your perspective, what are the chances that these negotiations could collapse in the near time?
Well, I think it's in Russia's advantage now, if indeed it was Putin who asked for the meeting, to string them out a while. If they could force Zelenskyy into the position of being the one who gave a thumbs down on negotiation, to make it look like he was the one who was against peace, who was obstructing Trump's efforts, they would do it as soon as they could. But after a while, as these things go on, with Trump's attention span being what it is, he may well turn to something else. So I don't think it's in Russia's interest in the near term to see these talks end quickly. The more they drag on, particularly with a ceasefire that freezes the front lines in their current form, I think it's something that on net it helps the Russians.
From your perspective, if such negotiations collapse, will President Trump be able to force Putin to renew these negotiations? Does Trump have enough leverage over Vladimir Putin right now? Because there have been lots of discussions that Trump doesn't have enough leverage to force Putin to sit at the negotiating table to reach appropriate deal, because he has some problems with imposing tariffs on China and other countries.
Well, I think that's a big question. China is the hardest question, but I believe the statistics show that Turkey, a NATO ally, is the third biggest purchaser of Russian oil and gas. And in part, these countries are going to say, look, what we're doing is not illegal under your own sanctions. The sanctions say the U.S. and EU will not import Russia oil or gas, but others may buy oil in this case as long as they keep it below the $60 per barrel price cap. And India in particular said, that's all we're doing. We're going to buy oil cheaply, and your own sanctions permit this. So I think Trump's ability to force Putin back to the table is limited unless Trump were to say unequivocally, I'm going to continue as far as the eye can see U.S. military assistance, weapons, ammunition, and military intelligence in particular, or even increase it. That would be the kind of pressure that would be felt by the Russian forces on the battlefront that could make a difference with Russia. We don't have any indication at this point, though, that that's what Trump would do.
You just mentioned about the security assistance for Ukraine. What is your take on this deal between US and NATO to provide Ukraine with weapons in exchange to European money?
Well, I think it's important. I think Ukraine can use the Patriots, and Trump can say, see, I'm making money off of it, which he cares to be able to say more than almost anything else. But it doesn't, that decision alone, even though it was the correct decision, doesn't tell you anything about the future supply of military assistance. I think there's overwhelming support in Congress to continue doing it, but to be effective for Ukraine, and maybe also to put more pressure on Putin, Trump has to be explicit about it, which he has not yet done.
Thank you, Ambassador Bolton, for your time and for your support for Ukraine, and glory to Ukraine.
Well, thanks again for having me.